Okay, Dalton Smith versus Sam Omazon. Now, the only other fight I saw in this card was Jordan Thompson versus Vasil Dusar or Dukar. I think the commentators were pronouncing it Dusar. So I saw that fight in the main event. So let's start off with the Jordan Thompson Dusar fight. Now, Jordan Thompson is a guy I've seen a few times before. Tall cruiserweight prospect, 6'6", 29 years of age, from Manchester. He apparently has sparred the likes of Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, and apparently spent a bit of time there with Fury. You can see maybe some of the influence of Tyson Fury on his style, although a guy who's 6'6", campaigning at cruiserweight, in most instances you'd expect to be a long-range, somewhat defensive boxer. And that's exactly what Jordan Thompson is. He doesn't have any of the flair of Tyson Fury, at least not from what I've seen so far. He is, I guess, boxing in a similar fashion to the way Tyson Fury did against Dillian Whyte. Not so much the way he boxed against Klitschko, because that was really hit and hop it stuff. But against Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury was careful against Whyte. He was cognizant of the fact that Dillian Whyte is a much better counterpuncher than the likes of Deontay Wilder. Hence, Fury wasn't as aggressive against Dillian Whyte as he was in the second and third Wilder fights. And Jordan Thompson employs similar tactics and a similar style to what we saw from Fury in the Dillian Whyte fight. But with that being said, he doesn't have the flair, the special effects as Floyd Mayweather would describe it. He's quite one-paced, and he's effective at what he does, yes, but he's not going to light up the box office, right? This is not a guy, based upon what I've seen so far, who's going to become a star, because he just isn't that exciting in the ring. I don't know what he's like outside of the ring, but inside the ring is not that exciting. It was methodical boxing from Jordan Thompson throughout the majority of this fight. Dusar is an aggressive guy. He's one of those guys who's more dangerous than his record would suggest. Strong, robustly built. He was actually stopped by Mike Perez not too long ago. We look at his record here. It was earlier on this year, in fact. He was stopped in the 10th round of 12 in Dubai against Mike Perez. I didn't actually see that fight. I haven't seen Mike Perez in action, perhaps since the Myris Breedis fight. I don't think I saw this one in Dusseldorf or Tony Salam. It's been a long time since I've seen him in the ring. 2017 when he fought Myris Breedis. That's 5 years ago. It doesn't feel like 5 years, folks. Oh, how time flies, especially as you get older. In any event, he was in against the rugged opponent who's only been stopped once, although he's lost 6 and drawn 1. Well, lost 5 going into the Jordan Thompson fight. And he was giving it a go. He was frustrated at one point during the fight. He was goading Jordan Thompson to stand and fight with him rather than moving around. But Jordan Thompson continued his boxing on the outside, using his height and reach as a guy with his dimensions should. But of course, there are fighters who use their height and reach, but also add a little bit of pizzazz onto it, a little bit of flair. And there are guys out there who hit a lot harder than Jordan Thompson. Not that Jordan Thompson is feather-fisted, because there were several occasions where he definitely buzzed Dusar in there. There was one occasion in particular where Dusar actually backed off. And it looked as though if Thompson had stepped on the gas, he might have been able to get the guy going. It might have been towards the end of the round, though. I forget now. Either way, it was a methodical performance up until the last round. I think he was a bit buzzed in the 9th round. And then in the 10th, Dusar was putting on a lot of pressure. Jordan Thompson was slipping and sliding. And for the most part, he appeared calm in the moment, but he seemingly was more tired than he was letting on, because he really wasn't doing that much to keep the guy off at that stage, because he was building up a head of steam. Dusar really piling on the pressure. Thompson didn't really fight fire with fire to keep him off, didn't wrap him up that effectively. He was more trying to do a shoulder roll, slip and slide here and there and just stay calm. But eventually Dusar put some shots together which did land, managed to hurt Jordan Thompson, and he went down face first, and he stayed down for quite a while. And this was in the, last 15 seconds of the bout? Stayed down for quite a while, got up at about the count of 8 or 9, which is really pushing it. There was a moment where you're thinking, is he actually going to stay down? Surely not, because he's got this fight won on the scorecards. Surely he's not going to stay on the canvas. That would be bizarre if he stayed on the canvas and didn't get up at this stage. But no, Jordan Thompson did get up just in the nick of time. I guess he was trying to wind down the clock or whatever. Maybe he didn't hear the bell go. I'm not sure. But he was taking his time. He wasn't rushing. He certainly wasn't panicking. And he did what he had to do. He got up. The fight was over. And he won the fight. I believe it must have been, it was a unanimous decision over 10. And that was for the vacant IBF European Cruiserweight title. This is different than the actual EBU Cruiserweight title. These are European titles invented by the sanctioning bodies, in this case, the IBF. I remember Anthony Yard won. Was it Anthony Yard? I think he won the WBO European title at one stage again, which is different than the actual EBU European title. So he came through. And of course, situations like this, tests like this, can help a fighter. You look at Tyson Fury. Would he have been able to survive that 12th round or even the 9th round when he first got dropped against Deontay Wilder in their first fight? Would he have been able to survive those situations if it wasn't for the experience that he had being in trouble against John McDermott in the first and second fights, being dropped by Nevin Pikage and Steve Cunningham? If he hadn't had those experiences earlier on, would he have come through against Wilder in the moment? You see what I'm saying? These experiences, even though they seem like a nightmare at the time, can actually help a fighter if they use that experience in the right way, to learn, etc. And it can make a fighter more calm. Once you've been on the canvas and you've come back to win, then if you get dropped in the future, it might not be as big a deal. You're less likely to panic because in your head, you're like, okay, I've been here before and I've got through this before. You see what I'm saying? So Jordan Thompson could use this experience in the same way, although there's a difference between getting dropped in the last, whatever it was, 15, 20 seconds of the bout and getting dropped in the first 15 or 20 seconds in the bout. Because in this instance, all he had to do was get up off the canvas and the fight was over, right? He's won on points. Whereas if you get dropped much earlier in a fight and you've got to last the rest of the fight with this guy who's hurting you, different situation. So while I'll say he'll gain something from this, he might not gain as much from it as, let's say, Tyson Fury gained getting dropped by Steve Cunningham. Okay? So anyway, moving forward, Jordan Thompson, I guess he's an interesting addition to the domestic scene in the UK at Cruiserweight. How far can this guy really go? Hard to say at this stage. I need to see him in there with a better level of opponent. But as I said earlier, not trying to be disrespectful, all the times I've seen Jordan Thompson fight, it's been kind of boring. I have to be honest. It hasn't been particularly entertaining. He does have 11 KOs on the resume. His last fight was a KO. Before that was a KO. Before that was a KO. But his style, even though he's got these stoppages, his style is just, I don't know, very methodical and kind of one pace to me. He does land some nice shots. And when a guy who's, 200 pounds, 6'6", got those long levers, he can generate some leverage. He's going to hurt guys at a certain level. But as he moves up, is he going to be someone that will produce exciting performances and a lot of knockouts? I suspect not. I hope I'm wrong, but I suspect not. Not that he doesn't have power there, but I think it's the mentality more than anything. Now, some people could say that, well, Lawrence Okolie isn't the most entertaining or exciting fighter in the world, but he's got serious power. He knocks people out even at the top level. I don't think Jordan Thompson hits as hard as Lawrence Okolie. I don't think Jordan Thompson is as physically strong as Lawrence Okolie, and I think that's why, from a fan perspective, this is actually a good thing. I think that's one of the reasons why Jordan Thompson fights are not as ugly as some Lawrence Okolie fights can be. Because Lawrence Okolie has gotten used to imposing his physical strength on his opponents. That is one of his tactics now, Vladimir Klitschko style. He's so much physically stronger that if his opponent is giving him any kind of issues from a boxing sense or even applying pressure on him, he can just wrap him up, maul him, wrestle him, and he knows that the opponent is not going to be able to do anything to counteract that. They're going to have to rely on the referee. Jordan Thompson, I'm not saying he's weak at all, but Lawrence Okolie is probably the strongest cruiserweight in the world. Thompson doesn't appear to have that level of physical strength. And so his fights are not as sloppy, not as messy as Okolie's fights can be. And he's going to have to rely more on his boxing. He is better coordinated than Lawrence Okolie. I don't think he has that kind of punching power. It remains to be seen whether he's got Lawrence Okolie's will, because Okolie is a very strong-willed individual. And that's also one of the reasons that Lawrence Okolie has become so successful thus far in his career, because of very, very strong will. Does Jordan Thompson have the will necessary to reach the top in this division? We will see. And the division is changing, of course, because you've got Maris Breedis, who's just been deposed, Jay Opataya, who is a very good boxer, but he doesn't appear to be a monster puncher. I'm sure he's got some power there, but he doesn't appear to be a monster in the division. It would appear as though Maris Breedis is a bigger puncher than Jay Opataya. And if Jordan Thompson is in there against an Opataya, will that be a fight where Thompson needs to really worry about Opataya's power? Obviously, all these guys, if they catch their opponent right, can probably hurt them or stop them. But I don't know. A boxer like Thompson in against an Opataya, or one of the other boxers in the division, he might fancy his chances, and it probably won't be a situation where he's getting blasted out. That's what I'll say about that. With that being said, you do still have the likes of Chris Smith, who is puncher, an aggressive guy. You've also got Richard Riakporhe, who's climbing the ladder in the cruiserweight division. Could we see a Richard Riakporhe against the Jordan Thompson sometime in the future? Obviously, Jordan Thompson is with Matchroom at the moment. He's certainly fighting on Matchroom shows. And therefore, you'd probably think it more likely that he would face, I don't know, a Lawrence Okolie possibly, if he was to get a world title shot. We don't know how long Okolie's going to be with Matchroom, of course. Could it be a voluntary for Lawrence Okolie fighting Jordan Thompson? Is this Jordan Thompson even ranked in the top 10? Maybe that would be too soon for Thompson. Maybe they'll be looking to take their time rather than jump in with a Lawrence Okolie at this stage, despite being 29 years of age. I don't know if Jordan Thompson has a long-term deal with Matchroom. If he doesn't, he might want to look to go and join Boxer. Because if Lawrence Okolie leaves Matchroom and let's say joins Boxer, and Richard Riakporhe's over there, and Chris Smith's over there, then Jordan Thompson's going to be the odd one out, staying with Eddie Hearn and DAZN. So we'll see what happens regarding his career moving forward. Anyway, moving on to the main event. We had Dalton Smith versus Sam Omazon or Mason. The commentators were using different pronunciations throughout the broadcast. I'm going to go with Sam Omazon. So, Dalton Smith from Sheffield, 140-pounder, orthodox. I think he's 25, 26 years of age. Can I click on his name here? Yeah, there we go. 25 years of age, 5'9.5" from Sheffield. Now, Sheffield has always been a great fight city for the UK over the past several decades. Since the 90s, been a great fight city, mainly because of the Winkerbank Gym, the Ingle Gym, that has produced several world champions. You had Prince Nassim, of course, Junior Witter, Kell Brook, as well as other fighters who didn't become world champions but were fighting at world level, such as Harold Graham, Ryan Rhodes, etc., etc. So, been a great fight city for, I forgot to mention Johnny Nelson. He was a world champion at the Winkerbank Gym. So, a lot of success for a long time. Dalton Smith, though, I don't believe he's from the Winkerbank Gym. Correct me if I'm wrong. Certainly doesn't have the typical Winkerbank style of old. I guess you could somewhat compare him stylistically to Kell Brook. There are similarities. He isn't quite as, heavily built as Kell Brook. Not that Brook is built like a bull or anything, but, he's a muscular guy. Dalton Smith, not that muscular, not as big, maybe around the same height, but he's a 140 pounder, whereas Kell Brook was 147 his whole career. And I don't think he quite has the arm length of Brook. Don't know what his reach is, but he doesn't appear to have the arm length. But stylistically, there are some similarities there. He's economical with his punches, which is something that Kell Brook had, his punch economy. Brook was never a volume guy. He liked to take his time. He used his jab. He tried to stay out the way. Not that he was a runner. Kell Brook was never a runner, but he wasn't a guy that liked to get involved in big exchanges. He liked to sharpshoot from the outside and control you with his jab. Dalton Smith is similar. He prefers quality over quantity. He likes to land clean, accurate shots. And if he doesn't think he's got a very high chance of landing clean and accurate, he just won't punch. So there are some similarities there with Kell Brook. Now, this is, I think, the second time I've seen Dalton Smith. The first time I saw him was during fight camp, which was, where are we at? It was, there we go. The 1st of August, 2020 against Nathan Bennett. That's the first time I saw him. I might have seen him since then, but I just forget. Some of these undercard fights aren't particularly exciting on, any show, but with Matchroom, it's the same. Not all the undercard fights are that memorable. That was the first time I saw him. And again, he was precise in that fight, picked his opponent apart. Same situation here against the southpaw Sam Omazon, who is also from Sheffield. Picked him apart, was calculated, was surgical with his precision, not wasting punches, he's got that economy going on. And he did the business. He managed to get the guy out of there, scored some heavy knockdowns, beat him up. Omazon's face was all bloody by the end of the fight, dropped heavily several times. And yeah, he got the job done. Now, when I look at Dalton Smith, he's really a prospect still at this stage, a hopeful, because he hasn't fought anybody of note thus far. He's 12-0, currently 10 KOs. He's fought the likes of Omazon. And other than him, who's on there? Ray, Moylet. Who else is on here? Nathan Bennett, of course. He was 9-1 when he fought him during fight camp. So yeah, he hasn't fought anybody of note. Needs some step-up fights. We need to find out what he's really all about and whether he can succeed at the next level in boxing. Remains to be seen. But from what I can see at the moment, I don't know whether this guy is going to be a new star for Eddie Hearn. Now, I want to preface that, or I want to add a caveat, should I say, because in the UK, certain fighters have tremendous local support, irrespective of whether they're world champions. Some guys just have it. They have a certain charisma about them, or they are representative of a certain demographic locally. And that demographic comes out in force. An example would be Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton represented young, well, not just young, but British working class males. They resonated with Ricky Hatton. And this is one of the reasons he was so successful long before he became a world champion. He had this huge following because, again, he just resonated with young working class, as in native British males in particular. So in more recent times, you've had the likes of Josh Warrington. He also resonates in his city in Leeds with the young working class males, or just working class males in general, never mind young. Will Dalton Smith have something similar in Sheffield? I don't know, in terms of that level of support, irrespective of how successful he becomes. Obviously, I've mentioned two guys who are world champions, but there have been other people. Lewis Ritson, never a world champion, lots of support in the Northeast. And with some of these guys, Derek Chisora, right? He's got a cult following up and down the UK. He manages to do fairly well, make money and whatever. That's heavyweight, which is a little bit different. But still, the point I really want to make here is I'm not sure Dalton Smith, I'm not writing him off here, but I'm not sure he's good enough to be an elite level fighter at 140 pounds. I'm not sure he's good enough. Because in that division, you've got the likes of Ryan Garcia, who just moved up. You've obviously got Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, still knocking around. You got the likes of Teofimo Lopez talking about moving up to 140. Surely Devin Haney, after the rematch with Kambosos, isn't going to hang around at 135 for too long. So he may end up at 140. Potentially Tank Davis moving up to 140. Can Dalton Smith really mix it with these guys? Can he be successful and become a world champion among that level of fighter? I have my doubts based upon what I've seen so far. Perhaps he'll have to wait until some of those guys are maybe a little bit past it, like a Josh Taylor. And with some of the younger guys, when they've maybe moved up to, let's say, 147. Because even if Dalton Smith decided to move up to 147 ahead of some of those guys, right, before some of those guys, at 147, the competition is no less tough. Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, Ortiz, Jerome Ennis. You know what I mean? Even Conor Benn is up there as a rising contender. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Eddie Hearn is going to need to find some talent to replace the AJs of the world. I'm not sure Dalton Smith is going to fill those shoes. And they're big shoes to fill. But I'm not sure he's going to fill those shoes. Obviously, Eddie Hearn's had success with the likes of Carl Froch. Later on, obviously, Anthony Joshua, but then Dylan White. You know, the latter stages of Derek Chisora's career. Kell Brook, obviously, he had a certain amount of success. I'm talking about commercial success with Eddie Hearn and so on. Can Dalton Smith do the same? It's a question for you guys. I have my doubts. I'm not writing him off because certain fighters have proved me wrong over the years where I saw them early on in their career and I didn't think much of them, but they went on to be more successful than I expected. Will Dalton Smith be the same? He seems decent, but in order to succeed at the highest level in his division 140, you need to be more than decent. This is a real strong division, especially when the likes of Haney and Teofimo Lopez have moved up. That's a scary division. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But as far as his performance against Omazon, it is what it is. It was a clinical performance. It was a good performance. But I don't know. To me, it was nothing spectacular. That's just my personal opinion. Let me know your opinion in the comments.